Okay, in this video I am going to show you how to use Procreate to create a exaggerated caricature just like this. The method I'm using is very unique and it's so perfect for beginners that it's almost like cheating. And I'm going to show you how I used every single one of these layers, how I created it, how I used it, and what the purpose of it is. So if you're ready, get your iPad and let's start drawing. Okay, this is a super simple method for creating an exaggerated caricature using Procreate. I've got the photo I'm going to use. I put it in Procreate at one of the lower layers. Now I'm going to lower the opacity like this. Go to a layer above it, and I'm just going to quickly trace over it. And I know that's like cheating a little bit. I don't normally do this, but I got this idea from a How to Draw Caricatures course from quite a ways back by Jim Keyl. And in that video, in that course, he used tracing paper. But with an iPad Pro, I don't need tracing paper. I've got my layers. Now this is just a start. I'm not going to cheat on the caricature and trace over the thing and claim that I've created a piece of art. I just want to get the basic shapes and the placement of them. And it doesn't even have to be super accurate. I'm just going to get it down there. So that's the face shape. Now we're going to get the hair shape on there. And you can see how rough I'm doing this. I'm not even trying to be super accurate because I don't want people thinking that I'm a cheater and I just trace after stuff. But stay with me and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's a cool method. I don't think I got that accurate, but whatever. Okay, so now we're going to make the photo disappear. Now let's lower the opacity of this. Okay, this is where the magic happens. Let's change colors so that we know that I'm working on a different layer with a different color. So the first thing is to think of basic caricature theory. And the very first thing you look for is the shape of the head. Okay, so the first thing I notice is the head is taller than it is wide. If you're just going by the face, not including the hair. Let's just measure it for the video. It's this tall, but it's this wide. So it's almost twice as tall as it is wide. So we know it's taller than it is wide. So then we're going to trace over, sort of tracing. We're not actually tracing now. What we're doing is we're going to exaggerate that head shape. We know that our head is taller than it is wide. So what are we going to do? We're going to change the head shape, exaggerate it, and make it much taller than it is wide. And then I can use some of these tools to change it a little bit. If I'm going to stretch it taller, it automatically becomes skinnier because you want to keep the same volume. It's almost like a water balloon. If I squeeze the water balloon in the middle, it'll balloon up at the bottom and below where I've squeezed, but it still has the same volume. If I push in both sides of a water balloon, it will get longer. If I squash them, it'll get wider. So we're keeping that in mind. And now, I think the hair on this, I can just add it in and make it fit the head shape. I mean, if you're kind of following along and trying to do this yourself, you can make the decision on how to do that. But I feel like I can just fit the hair on there and it'll be fine. So that right there is a basic caricature. But let's not stop there. Let's maybe do it one more time. Let's lower the opacity. Go to a layer above it. Let's change the color of my lines just so that it make sure I know what I'm drawing, what layer I'm drawing on, and let's do it again. Okay, so I'm just keeping the bone shapes in mind, making it a little bit longer, a little bit skinnier. I don't know if you've seen my videos on the caricature exercise that changed my life, where I take a person's face and I draw it 2 or 3 times over and over again right beside each other. This is almost the same thing as that, except I'm lowering the opacity and kind of tracing over, with the drawing underneath as my guide. Okay, so I think we're going to stick with this. Now, the second thing that I look at are the features. There's going to be a T shape. That's her eyes and her nose. Okay, so she has big eyes, big eyelids. Okay, before I draw too much, let me just point out what I'm noticing in her face. So when it comes to the features and the head shape, a second part of caricature theory is to compare a person to an average. Okay, I may put on the screen what an average face may look like. And what I'm noticing with her is her eyes are bigger than the average. Her eyebrows are much bigger than the average person's eyebrows, and they're very high above her eyes. And then if I look at her nose is much longer than the average nose. It comes down like this. Then near the end, there's a big bulb at the end. There's some dimensions to her nose too. Since I'm sketching, I can add some of that. I may not keep that in with the final drawing. And then her lips are huge and kind of pouty. I know this looks like a bad drawing, but I'm just getting down the features. And then there is a bump here where her chin is. So that's what I'm seeing about her face. It's taller than it is wide. She has big eyes, huge eyebrows that are high above her eyes. She has giant lips. And then she's got the bump over her chin. But all this is compressed. If I stretch the nose, then the part I'm not stretching, which is the chin, it compresses. Okay, at this point I am cleaning up my sketch, making my lines more precise, but still keeping it loose. I never want to waste time making a perfect sketch. Instead of that, I just want to improve it every time I do a pass. Okay, so it looks like I've made an incredible mess of a crazy looking drawing, but this is just a sketch. Hopefully I can take this and turn it into a really cool looking caricature. Okay, this next step, I'm just flipping the canvas to look for any problems with the perspective. And the perspective looked pretty good on this sketch, so I'm just going to lower the opacity and start putting in my lines. And I want to make sure that I'm varying the thickness of the lines, that I've got thin lines and thick lines. So if it's just a slight fold in the skin, I'm going to be using a very thin line. But if it's the edge of a hard object like the nose or something like that, then I'm going to thicken the lines. And then where there's a shadow away from the light, the lines will be a little thicker on that also. I'm also keeping in mind that the interior lines of the face are always going to be more or less thinner than the outline of the face. And the way I learned all that is by redrawing other drawings from artists that I consider to be masters and from drawing things from life. Okay, so it's probably not the best caricature I've ever done, but I think it still kind of looks like her. It has more or less a likeness, and it's definitely exaggerated. So now, might as well add some color to it since we're on Procreate. So I'm going to create some color layers. Let's see, this first layer, it's going to be below the lines, and we'll make it flat colors. We'll name this flat colors. Pick a color from my flesh tone palette, and that's not it. Let's try again. I want to pick that one. Okay, so what I'm doing here is that a cool feature on Procreate is if you outline the area where you want to fill with color, and you make sure there's no breaks in that outline, then you can drag the color over and drop it in the outline, and it instantly fills. So I'm just creating that outline. Now grab the spot, pull it over, release it, and it fills the area. I have another palette here that I've titled Eye and Hair Color, but really I've got grays and browns and some odd colors. Well, here, yeah, I guess there's green and blue for eyes, but I'm gonna try this brown and see if it works for her hair. Because we're gonna be going back over these colors. We're gonna add shadows and highlights. And so I just want to get the base, the medium base of the hair color. And because I'm just drawing for fun, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not going to publish this anywhere except for YouTube. I mean, I may post it and show it around, but I'm not like trying to sell it to nobody. I'm just doing it for fun. So it doesn't have to be perfect. So what I'm doing right now is I'm outlining the shape that I want to fill in with this brown color. So I could just go over this entire area that I want to be brown, make sure there's no gaps, and then what I do is touch this dot with my Apple Pencil, try again, and see it drags the dot over this outlined area, and then I let it go, and there it is. Now the whites of her eyes. Eyebrows, a darker color. You'll notice most people's eyebrows are darker than their hair. Not everybody, that's exceptions to every rule, but most people, their eyebrows will be darker than their hair color. So you may get somebody with blonde hair but brown eyebrows. Sometimes it's rare you'll get somebody with blonde hair and blonde eyebrows. But the majority, eyebrows are going to be darker than the hair, and so you can almost just grab that a darker color real quick and almost be correct every time. Her eyes look hazel to me, so I'm going to add green and then brown and kind of mix it together. A basic lip color. And I didn't draw these lips perfect. They're kind of out of whack a little bit. Perspective-wise, that is to say. But because it's an exaggerated caricature, it almost doesn't matter. But if I wanted to fix it, I'd have to go back to the lines and move it around. That might work. That little fix there may do it. Okay, there's the flat color. Okay, we got the flat colors on there. Now, if you're still watching the video, I am going to show you a secret. I'm going to add all the layers of color, but this next layer is a sort of like a secret layer that I learned from another artist. I'm going to name it Variation. I guess it's not really a secret, but I kind of pretend that it is because I don't see a lot of artists doing this, except for the one I learned it from. And here it is. This is flat color for a cartoon, but a human's face does not have flat color. There's variations of color in the face. On this layer, I am going to find the yellows and the blush reds. Different parts of your face have more blood capillaries underneath it, and there's other parts of your face with less blood capillaries that are kind of stretched just because the way the muscles in your face work. And so there's areas in your face that have more red blush, and there are areas that have more yellow, and it's kind of slight. It's not super apparent right off the box, you know, staring you in the face. No pun intended. But first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my airbrushing area, and I'm going to pick my favorite airbrush to use. That'll work. Soft blend. Let's do it. Now I'm going to lower the opacity way down, maybe even lower the size of this thing. And I'm just going to look for the yellow. I think I can see some yellow on this eyelid. I may even make this more yellow. I mean, this is not like most extreme yellow, but it's this is sort of like a desert yellow. Maybe we can do better with that yellow color. How about that? We can also use that smudge tool to move it around. Okay, so around here, around the upper lips, I always find a lot of yellow. Right around the smile lines, sometimes around here. Sometimes it's specific to each face. But I'm seeing some yellows here. I mean, just, you kind of have to really look with your like X-ray vision. Where are the yellows in this face? A lot of times you'll see some yellows in this eye cavity area, but you'll definitely see them around the smile lines. here's another trick. This layer, make it a clipping mask. Now it sticks to the layer below it, so I'm not going to accidentally draw out here. I see some yellow in her neck. And if it gets too yellow, I'm not going to worry about it because it's just like a, you know, just a fun video for YouTube. And I'm not going to overdo it. I'm just where I see yellow in the photo of this lady, I'm adding it. Now, a color that's easier to see is the blush pink. Now I have the blush pink here on my skin tone color swatch. I'm going to choose that. I still have the airbrush selected and the opacity and the size. The blush is really easy to predict. It's almost always on the nose. I don't see it that much in this photo, but because I know everybody has blush on their nose, I can add it anyway. Then you have blush in the cheeks. I definitely see some blush up here on the photo. Then right here, this part of the nose is a shadow, but it could be considered blush. I see a little bit of blush underneath these eyes. Definitely see some pink blush in this eye socket. Then a lot of times there's going to be some blush between the eyes and parts of the forehead. The ear almost always have blush. It's you can get away with making the ear very red. Went over a little bit there, but okay, and the chin almost always has some blush in it. These are just natural areas of everybody's face that have more red in it. I'm not trying to shadow, I'm not trying to add shadows. I'm just looking for spots in her skin that have more blush or yellow. And this is all slight, and it'll work with anybody's skin tone. Because you've got the flat color, and then we're going to go over it with shadows and highlights. And you could smooth it out, but let's just leave it. Next, create a layer for shadows. Now, I've seen people make 2 shadow layers, one for drop shadows and one for contour shadows. A drop shadow would be like this. Like say that the light is coming down like this, and her chin, wait. First of all, I have to switch back to inking. James's favorite pen, okay. A drop shadow would be like this. Let me get this thing right. Okay. Where her chin is casting a shadow onto her neck. See? And then a contour shadow would be like this. Her eyelid is rounded, and so part of it is shaded. That would be a contour shadow. It's not okay, but I put both my shadows on the same layer unless I'm really doing some really detailed drawing. But let me just go back and explain what I just skipped over. I've gone back to my markers. I've chosen James's favorite pen, which is basically the Procreate Studio pen that I've adjusted a little bit. And it just makes a really nice line. I can get thin and thick and all that. Okay, so now I'm going to add the shadows. And this is super simple. I'm just looking at the photo, and where I see shadows, I'm adding them onto the drawing. And I am simplifying. I'm not trying to make this a super realistic masterpiece. It's just a fun cartoon caricature drawing. But I am, when I do put down a shadow, it's coming from what I see on the photo. But I may leave some shadows out, if that makes sense. Okay, once I get these shadows on the face, I'm going to smooth them out. And to do that, I'm choosing this smudge tool, which I have set to my airbrush. And then I'm just smoothing out the edges. May have to change the size of the smudge tool to get the effect that I want. I may play with it, but sometimes you want to leave hard edges, and sometimes you want to smooth them out. And right now I'm just going by what I think looks good or looks fun. I'm gonna add some more shadows on this lip. I don't know what this is called medically, but I call it like the divot in the lip. And it's pretty pronounced. And I can see if I can exaggerate that by adding some shadows around it. All right, now we're gonna add some shadows to the hair. Okay, the next thing I gotta do is add some highlights. I'm just gonna rename that layer. Highlights. And normally I don't name the layers as I go. I'm just doing it for the YouTube video in case you want to go back and look at them. And then I'm setting this layer to add. And I forgot to mention on the shadows, I set the layer, I don't know what you call it, the modality or whatever. You touch this button and there's a drop down menu, and these are all the different modalities. Shadow is always set to multiply when I do it. And then highlights is gonna be set to add or to screen. Either one of those creates a good highlight. The add is a little more intense than the screen. So let's put it on add. Now we're gonna do highlights on our skin. So I just wanna choose a skin tone of some sort. And I can do that by just holding my finger on the screen. I'll lower the opacity because if I do it at full opacity, it's really bright. I'm gonna lower the opacity. And once again, I'm just more or less sticking to the highlights that I see in the photo. I see like a highlight here. There's one that runs along the ridge of her nose, kind of fades out, and then it comes back right to this corner. There's a little bit of a highlight here on the eyelid. Another one here on this eyelid. Highlight that runs along this ridge. Got a highlight on this part of the chin. Okay, let's blend these in. See if they look a little harsh there, but I can blend some of them, if not all of them, in. And on this one, I just want to blend that side of the highlight. Oh, if I can, it's not blending. I'm on the right layer, right? Yep. Okay. Just blended this one in that area, maybe right here a little bit. It doesn't all have to be blended in. How do I know what to blend in and what not to blend in? Well, I just look back, sit back from a distance and kind of look what doesn't seem right, what seems too harsh, what doesn't seem harsh enough. Here's another thing, is rim light. And sometimes I can do this on a totally separate layer also. Let's go ahead and do that just for the fun of it. A lot of time in movies, they set up highlights on the actors to hit the rim of their face and kind of highlight that. And it's a dramatic look that they're doing on purpose. Got to set the modality to add. And basically, that would be just running along the rim, depending on where the main light source is coming from. Sometimes there's light being reflected from something near them, and so you could have it coming from different sides. And my battery is dying. Okay, so let's put some highlights on her hair. I'm gonna choose a brown color. And then once again, I'm just looking at the photo. I'm seeing some highlights in this area. Maybe a little bit of a rim highlight. Some highlights here. Alrighty, so I'm just going to go over what I did here. So on this layer, I've got a reference photo, and then I traced over that reference photo. And you can see it's not a great trace. That looks crazy. But that's not the point. The point is to just get everything in place, in proportion. Then I traced over top. I lowered the opacity. Then I traced over top of that. And I found out what I was going to exaggerate and why. Lowering that opacity, I did another sketch where I was increasing the exaggerations. And it got messy because I'm finding things as I'm sketching. So we can decrease the opacity on that. And then we did a sketch on top of that, cleaning it up. Now, it's still not great, but it is a cleaned up sketch in that the positions of everything is more well defined. And then I added the lines. And once I had the lines I wanted, and they look pretty good to me, next thing I do, I'm going to add the flat colors. Then I'm going to add the color variations, which is the blush and the yellow. Then I'm going to add the shadows using the multiply modality. Then I'm going to add highlights using the add modality. And then just for fun, we added rim lights on a different layer. We could have added that on the same layer as the normal highlights. And then just to finish it off, we added like a square of color behind it to frame it, make it look cool. So let me know what you think in the comments. And do you know any tricks with Procreate and this type of thing that I haven't thought of yet? If so, leave a comment and let me know what you think. I think it turned out pretty good. And I just wanted to let you know that I made all of this available on Gumroad. So if you'd like to get this exact Procreate file with all of these layers to take a close look at, go to that link in the description and click on that, and you can get it on Gumroad. And I'm also going to include James's favorite brush pen and these color skin tone swatches. Not squatches, they're skin tone swatches. Thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next video.